So to start the next module or chapter, what I wanted to do here is start with the principle of KISS. We've all heard KISS, which is keep it simple, stupid. Um, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I think is really important is that in having any successful program, especially a marketing program, is to have a system and a process. What we've done at Cutton Consulting Group is we've created what we refer to as our CPA relationship model. And the idea of the CPA relationship model is really to help you to understand from step A through step Z exactly where we're trying to take the CPA or professional that we're looking to partner with. So I'm a big believer is if you know where you're trying to take someone, throughout your sales process, you're simply working through that process to get them to the next stage of where you know you need to go. So put simply, this relationship model, I want it to become ingrained within you so that you are actually unconsciously conscious of exactly where you're trying to go. So it all starts with prospecting. So as I've said earlier, prospecting is about getting belly to belly with the CPA. We're going to go through it. Our next chapter, in fact, is going to really talk about exactly how to meet CPAs in your community through your existing clients, through CPE events, through cold calling, potentially using telemarketing services. But it all starts with prospecting. I want to share with you a formula. Here's my belief and what I've seen from advisors who've gone through our program. At the end of the day, you need to figure out how to sit in front of approximately 64 accountants or CPAs in the next 12 months in order to have the level of results that we're talking about. And again, that's a couple of revenue sharing relationships and 2 or 3 non-revenue sharing relationships. I'm a big data guy, and statistically speaking, it'll take that number of contacts or activity in order to drive the end result that we're looking at. Right, so 64 face visits with CPAs will ultimately bear the results that we're looking to achieve. So think about it this way. From, in essence, February through tax season, it's a very difficult time to go out and prospect to CPAs and accountants because they're out there meeting with their clients. So the reality of the situation is we have 8 months per year in order to see these folks. So 8 months per year with 4 weeks, I should say, and each month gives us 32 weeks to actually sit belly to belly with CPAs. So your goal is to see 2 CPAs a week. We'll revisit prospecting, but that's belly to belly. Part 2 of the process is the initial meeting. So here's what I want you to understand. The main purpose of the initial meeting, and we'll go into detail about exactly what to do in the initial meeting later in the program, but the main purpose of the initial meeting is quite simple. It's to get the second meeting. That's it. So we are there to interview the CPA. What we're not there to do is to talk to the CPA about the sales process, about how we can help them make money, about how we want to work with their largest and best clients. That's the common mistake that most advisors make, is in the first meeting they're already talking about business. So I have a saying, my saying's simple. It's this, is it's not about the money, it's not about the money, it's not about the money until it's about the money. So I'll say it again, not about the money, it's not about the money, it's not about the money until it's about the money. So what do I mean by that? The CPA and accountant wants a revenue stream for their practice. We talked about that earlier. But the reality of the situation is they're not going to partner with you until they truly believe that you, in fact, are there and can provide value to their clients. We already know they don't trust us, so the last thing we want to do in that first introductory meeting is be a salesperson. The last thing we want to do in that first meeting is talk about business. We're there to find a resource, listen closely to what I'm saying, a resource for our clients. We offer, as financial advisors, a valuable referral source to the accounting firm. And that's how we're going to get in the door. We'll talk in more detail about exactly how we do that later. But why we're there because we are looking to do 2 things. Find a competent accounting firm who could take good care of our clients and has the competence and integrity to do so, who's also open to building a mutually beneficial relationship with a financial advisor. That's what we're searching for. So in that meeting, we're interviewing, meaning we're asking questions like, how'd you get started in the business? Tell me about your fee structure. How will you service my clients? Do you have any specialties? Hopefully you get the idea. We want them to talk, right? God gave us all 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should spend more of our time listening and less of our time speaking. When you listen to someone, I want you to think about this for a minute. When you listen to someone, think about who your confidant is, whether it be your spouse, whether it be your best friend, whether it be your priest or your rabbi. It's that person, you usually care about them and really like them because they're really good listeners. They listen to what you say and they genuinely seem interest. That's your role in the first meeting, to get to know the CPA, learn how they got started, what their business is about. Quite simply, at the end of that meeting, after you've done a lot of listening and a lot of open probing, asking of open-end questions, some of that material is in your book, samples of open-end questions, what you then want to do is simply end that first meeting by saying the following. After spending some time with you today, I can see how you could be a good fit for some of my other clients. I'd love to invite you to my office next week because I'd like to show you what I do and how I operate so that we can both get to know each other a little bit better and see if there is a potential for us to build a mutually beneficial relationship with each other. If they agree to that, which about 2/3 of the time, guys, they will, you're simply scheduling your next meeting, which is the next bullet point that I have to talk about on the slide here, which is scheduling the office visit along with a lunch meeting or some type of breaking bread meeting. So in between those 2 meetings, as you can see, we want to send what I like to call an assumptive thank you. So in your book, there's an actual example of a letter that we use or a note that we use, which quite simply is a handwritten note that basically says something along the lines of, like to take the time and energy, to thank you for the time and energy you put into our meeting yesterday or today. I found the meeting to be very productive and hope you felt the same. I'm looking forward to seeing you next Tuesday, hypothetically, at 10:30 a.m. in my office. Looking forward to building a mutually beneficial relationship, John. I like the idea of sending a snail mail note, a little card, and in addition to that, an email. The reason I like to do both is I think it's really easy for that accountant to reciprocate right back with an email response based on the email that you had originally sent them. I call that, guys, the laws of reciprocity. When you send someone a thank you, it was nice to meet you, looking forward to building our next relationship, usually what most people will do is reciprocate by saying, I feel the same way too. It's kind of like getting them on the yes train from my perspective. So after you've sent that note, you've already have your next meeting, the office visit set up. They're going to come to your office. Ideally, that meeting would be at 10:30 or 11 o'clock a.m., and it would be followed by a lunch meeting. That lunch meeting, by the way, is not to wow them. It doesn't need to be at the best steakhouse in town. That lunch meeting could be at the local diner, the local Applebee's, whatever it may be. It's not to impress them. When they come to your office, I like to call it the show and tell meeting. They're in your show and tell meeting. They come to the office and the show begins. Your receptionist should already be prepped with the fact that Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, CPA, is coming into the office. They should be walked around the office by you, introduced to your colleagues. If you have a small team or no team, that's okay. If you have a large team, introduce them to everyone. If you're lucky enough to have a administrative assistant and a financial planning department and a trading department or what have you, introduce them to the folks. If you're at a large firm that has many advisors, introduce them to your colleagues or your branch manager. I want you to understand the typical accountant that we're talking to, these small practitioners that we target, they might work in an 800 square foot office. If you've ever been in an accountant's office, guys, you've seen it looks like a bomb blew up. There's papers all over, it's messy, etc. So when they come into your office, they're going to be very, very impressed. You want to remember that, and you want to make sure that they get the full tour of the office. Then you're going to bring them into your office or your conference room. The way I like to do it is we actually have our laptop set up, and on the television in our conference room, we have our kit. I'm going to teach you that kit later in the presentation, but in essence, we're going to show them what makes our practice better and different. If you remember earlier, I talked about how financial CPAs view financial advisors as being a step above a used car salesperson. This is our opportunity to change that perception so that they begin to view you as a professional and their peer, and you'll begin to, in essence, build the feeling that they will have a mutual respect for you as a business person and as a practitioner. It's really getting to a point where they have that respect and that mutual admiration. So in that meeting, we're going to review things like a sample of a financial analysis. CPAs are analytical. Let them sink their teeth into it. Talk about Monte Carlo simulation. Talk about other alternatives that we can look at. What would happen if the client sold a house? What would happen if inflation rates were higher or lower, or rates of returns? We are financial advisors. That's what we do for a living. So you should really shine here by showing them your process. One of the things we like to do, and we'll go into detail on this later, is to go through our Morningstar to show a client or a prospective client when we met them first, when they came into our office, and what their portfolio looked like and what our findings were, and then ultimately what we recommended. So the reality is we're able to wow them with the changes or alterations that we were able to make to their portfolio. We talk about things like betas and alphas and standard deviation, and it's really an opportunity to shine and impress the CPA. Here's what I want you to know. Most CPAs, not all of them, don't truly even understand what a beta or an alpha or a standard deviation is, or what a mutual fund or an ETF or a variable annuity or managed money is all about. So while we're educating them, what we're not doing is making them feel as if they don't know something. So I would say it in a way like this. As you can see, and as you're aware, when we made these changes in the portfolio, we were able to reduce the beta coefficient, reduce the standard deviation, and add some alpha to the client's portfolio. So while that might be confusing even to me or you, the reality of the situation is, to a CPA, what they hear is someone who really is experienced and knows what he or she is doing. Polar opposite of what they believe about us. I always love to ask this question when I'm in a live group, and I ask for a raise of hands, which is how many advisors in the room have actually gone out and done a show and tell meeting with the CPA. It's rare that a hand ever goes up. So what I know is that CPAs have never had this experience, and quite frankly, they don't know what to expect, and they are often unbelievably impressed with what they see. We show them things like our client service model. We show them our concierge services if you have them, client events that you have. Sometimes I'll even call my company's sales consulting number just to ask a question about a retirement plan or some part of the business to show how easy it is to gain access to information. I'll take them on my company's portal to show them all the seminars we offer, or to show them all of the resources that we have available. What you have, guys, is really valuable to a small CPA who doesn't have all the resources that many of us have. The reality of the situation is they are unbelievably flawed at our systems and our structure and our process. That's exactly where we want them. So we're going to spend as much or as little time with that CPA in this meeting as we feel they need. The more information they want, the more engaged they are, the more I want to give them. Generally, we're in that meeting for about an hour or so. As soon as that meeting is over, we're going to go to lunch, and we're going to plan that beforehand. As I said, it doesn't need to be a wow factor lunch. I'm going to ask one simple question at that lunch. You know what that question is what did you think? It's as simple as that, guys. As soon as we sit down, I'm going to say, what did you think of my operation? What you're going to hear is how great it was. They didn't just spend an hour plus in your office to tell you they weren't impressed. They're selling themselves on you, and that's exactly where you want them. You're going to hear things like, I didn't realize how comprehensive your approach was. It's great that you see your clients quarterly. I love that you do client events. You mentioned the solo defined benefit plan that you do, or the fact that you have a great hedge fund, or you do covered calls, or whatever it is that's better and different about your practice. They're going to tell you some positive things. often, and I hear this all the time from advisors I train, they're going to already begin to say things like, I have a client who could benefit from a financial plan, or I have a client who would be an ideal candidate for a qualified retirement plan. They're going to want to give you referrals. Doesn't happen all the time, but it happens much of the time. When that happens, here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to take the referral. I want you to really understand what I'm about to say, because it's critically important in your success in my program. If you get this, you're really, really going to do well, in my opinion, in understanding the psyche of a CPA. When they ask you, hey, I have Mr. and Mrs. Smith who would be an ideal candidate for a financial plan, here's what I want you to say. And we have some of this scripted that you'll see later in the program. So if the CPA's name was Jim, I'm going to say, hey, Jim, I'm absolutely flattered that at this point you would consider giving me a referral. I really appreciate that. But can I make a suggestion? Why don't we both do a little bit more due diligence? Why don't we get to know each other a little bit more, do a little more research to make sure that we're definitely the right fit for each other? I think we're on the right track, but I think we should both do a little bit more due diligence in order to make sure that this is going to be the right marriage for both of our firms. So here's why I say that, guys. And I want you to get this, because if you get the CPA mindset, this is going to go a long way in your success. I said earlier, CPAs view you and I as a step above a used car salesperson, okay? So if we understand that, we can come to grips with that. If you get that point and then understand we got the CPA at a moment of weakness. They were skeptical, we got them excited by our opportunity, and then after getting them excited, they showed a moment of weakness, and that moment of weakness allows us to show them how professional we are and how we are, like them, fiduciaries. I'll talk about fiduciary responsibility later on, but how we are fiduciaries to our clients just like they are. Because if we do that, what they're going to understand is we're not here just to make money. We're not here to make a sale. We're actually here to help create a win-win situation and enhance the overall client experience. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but at the end of the day, that's the idea of that lunch meeting. And the idea of the lunch meeting is to get them excited, to hear all the positive feedback about your practice, and like everything else, to ultimately get to the next meeting. And that next meeting, what I define it as, is a client event planning, or quite simply getting the CPA to do something, or for that matter, anything, right? So I'm going to give you a quick story when you talk about doing something, because I think it's really important to understand. And I think that I've said many times that working with CPAs is not a sprint, but it's a marathon. So the quicker we go, the more resistance we're going to get. CPAs are trained to find errors, right? That's what an auditor does, is they look at data and try to find the mistakes. So what they're doing is they're looking for a kink in our armor to see if that ugly salesperson that they think we are rears his or her ugly head, which is why my program is designed to do a series of takeaways, and we continuously push the proverbial check back to the CPA in order to help them build confidence and trust in our integrity as professionals. So I want to share with you a quick story or two that I think will help you to understand that. So the first thing that I want to talk about as an example is really more of a question, I guess, is the best way to phrase it. I want you to ask yourself this question. If you had a prospective client come into your office next week and they had $5 million portfolio, and you went through your normal process, whether that be 3 meetings or 4 meetings, and after going through your 3 or 4 meeting process, you finally got to the point where you said it was time to ask for the business. You went through your proposal, and your closing statement was, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, do you want to move forward moving your portfolio? So here's the question that I asked. Do you ask for the whole $5 million portfolio? I ask this question to groups of advisors all the time. Here's what I would tell you. About 80 to 90% of advisors ask for the whole $5 million. I'm going to give you a little tip, which I've done in my career forever. I never ask for the whole $5 million. Here's what I've said to each prospective client of mine. For about the last 18 years, I made this mistake the first 2 years or 3 years that I practiced. Here's what I say. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we've spent the last 3 or 4 meetings together getting to know each other. I think I've put together a fabulous recommended portfolio for you. Here's what I want to share with you. I don't think it makes sense for me to manage your entire portfolio at this point. You've worked your entire life to amass this wealth, and quite frankly, I think that you need to get to know me, my process better before you commit to giving me your life savings. I wouldn't feel right as your advisor advising you to do anything differently. Here's what I'd like to ask. I'd like you to give me a chance. If I can help you manage some small portion of your portfolio, maybe 20 or 30% of it to begin with, that would give us the opportunity to make a relationship begin. You would get to know me better and see how I operate, and it would give me the next year or so to really earn your trust so that I can earn the rest of your business. I would really appreciate if you gave me the chance to do that. So guys, I'm going to share that with you. If you follow what I just said with many large clients that you meet with going forward, I will tell you that your ratio of implementation will go through the roof. And I share that with you for this reason. Many advisors make that big mistake and ask for all the business. No different. To bring it back to CPAs, guys, once they start to feel excited, their innate CPA culture, which is to be skeptical and cautious, is going to come through, and they're going to start to revert back to how they felt before, which is I might not trust this person sitting in front of me. I'm going to give you another quick story, okay? And I'm big on stories because I think people remember them, and I think that they resonate and teach very good lessons. So here's my story. It's a true story. Advisor who went through my training program, this is probably 3 years old or so at this point. He went through my training program. He listened to me say, as I said to you today a bunch of times, it's not a sprint but a marathon. Take your time. Don't go too quickly. Don't talk about money. Don't talk about business until the CPA wants to talk about it with you and brings it up to you. Keep pushing that proverbial check back. I took a call with him about 3 months after he went through this same training program you're going through today. Here was what he said on the telephone. He said, hey, John, whoever said there's no such thing as a magic pill was wrong. Your program is unbelievable. It changed my career. I've already had 3 accounting firms who've committed. I have one who's going to get licensed. I just bought the books for them. I have another who is already licensed. They're going to come to my firm and transfer the clients that they have into my book of business. And the third wants to do a client appreciation event for their clientele. I'm going to be the guest speaker, and they're going to invite all 500 of their clients. Your program is amazing. I took the feedback. I thanked this advisor. I went back to my team in my own financial planning practice, and here's what I said. I said, guys, maybe we're not doing this right. Maybe we're taking too much time. I'm being so cautious, pushing that proverbial check back with my takeaways because I'm concerned about my credibility. And here's this advisor who after 90 days has 3 relationships. He was doing better than I was. So here's the rest of the story. About 6 weeks later, and I will share with you, I've had one client in all of my coaching career. We've trained close to 1,000 advisors who's ever asked me for a refund. It was this advisor. He called me a few weeks later and said this, your program is terrible. The first CPA that was going to get licensed, I paid for the books. He won't even return my call. Second CPA, they were going to transfer all of their clients' assets over. He won't return my call, said he's going to stay exactly where he is in an email. And the third person who wanted to do a client event, he's not interested in doing the client event anymore. Said it was too fast and he didn't want to move forward. So here's why I'm sharing that story with you, and I hope it resonates and you remember it. Just because it feels like it might be time with the CPA to move forward and kind of close that deal like we've been taught to as financial advisors, doesn't mean it's the right time. They're very skeptical. You do not want to talk about business or move too quickly. You have to follow my system. You have to follow my process. You shouldn't be building a relationship, a true alliance relationship, any sooner than 4 months in. Most of the time, guys, set your expectation. It's 6 to 18 months, if not longer. I have CPAs today that it's taken me 2 years to get to a point where they want to finally be compensated. So it is not a sprint. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and you have to be in it for the long term. So I know it's a long story, but my belief is that it's an important one, and it's a lesson to ultimately be learned. So get them to do something that they're comfortable with. In the training manual, when we talk later about our meeting 3, we're going to talk about getting the CPA to do something, or as I like to call it, dipping their foot in the pool before they dive in. And I have a list of different things that we can do, and we'll review that later in the training program here. Some of those things, guys, as an idea, are, hey, how about we come into your office and we do a cursory review of your current retirement plan that you have in place for your employees, or a financial plan for you as the CPA. Or why don't you call your 3 favorite clients and ask them this very question. You're one of my valued clients. I've been considering integrating financial services into my tax practice and wanted your opinion. If I found a financial advisor that had integrity, experience, and a track record of success, and I, as your CPA, invited them to become my financial planning department, and I oversaw it from above, from 1,000 feet above, as my client, would that be valuable to you? Let the CPA ask their clients. That's a little step, right? So all we want to do, I've had CPAs decide to have us sponsor client appreciation events, right? You want to remember, guys, the average accountant, and again, we're going to target these smaller accountants, right? Anywhere from a solo practitioner to a 25 or 30 person shop. Most of these accountants don't make as much money as we think. Average CPA, from my experience in these firms, makes $80,000 to $120,000 a year. So they don't have marketing budgets like we do, right? So to us, inviting our clients to a client appreciation event and asking them to bring a friend, my practice, we just did one of those recently. We had over 100 clients and referrals there. While that's not new to our industry, when was the last time your CPA invited you to his or her client appreciation event? They don't do it in their industry. So if we're willing to come in and offer that as a suggestion and pick up the tab for the event to meet their valued clients and have the opportunity to make a small presentation, a 20 or 30-minute presentation, think about what that means to be able to contribute maybe $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 to host their dinner workshop for their clients. How do they lose? Someone who's making $80,000, guys, isn't going to invest $3,000 in a client event. But if we do, we've all done our fair share of marketing and dinner seminars. Do you know what it's like to talk to an endorsed group of 50 to 75, let's say, clients of a CPA firm? Think about what that conversion is. My personal practice and many of the advisors who've gone through my program walk out of events like that with 10 to 15 new clients, right? So it's getting them to do something, and that something will be different for each and every accounting firm. Dip the foot in the water before you dive into the pool. Bi-weekly or weekly interactions or meetings with the CPA. Here's what I want you to understand. If there's any part of the process that is of significance, it's this part. I've always said the hard part in working with CPAs is to get them to agree to join your alliance program. Get them to say, yes, I'd like to work with you. That's the hard part. The harder part is, in essence, teaching them or influencing them how to refer. Part of our program, part of our webinars talks about leadership development and how to lead someone. A great leader influences someone to do something that they wouldn't do without you. So at the end of the day, these weekly and bi-weekly interactions are where you are influencing, teaching, and identifying opportunities. It's where you're able to create active referrals, right? A passive referral, guys, is when a CPA's client says, do you know a good financial advisor? And they give that referral to someone like you. That's a passive referral. That happens 3 or 4 times a year, maybe, if we're lucky, in an accountant's practice. An active referral is when that CPA is mining his or her client base to find clients for your practice. That's when you know you won the game. That's when you bring on 15, 20, 30, 40 clients a year from one accounting relationship. And that work happens in these weekly or bi-weekly interactions. If we shake hands with the CPA and we exchange business cards and hope for the best, guess what? We're not going to get the results that we hope for. We're going to be waiting for our phone to ring, and it never will. Some of us have been members in networking groups. I may have referenced that in another presentation that you may have listened to. If you've been part of a networking group, here's the reason they work. They work because you see the participants in the networking group every week. When you see people every week, you get to know them. You like them. You want to help them. And that's the reality of it, guys. When you get those weekly and bi-weekly interactions with the CPA, what's going to happen is you're going to build a relationship, a friendship, and an environment where you can influence the end result, which is you meeting as many of the CPA's clients as humanly possible to be able to offer your financial planning services as a whole. And then lastly, it's building the friendship for life. I likened it to being a good wholesaler, right? So think about your favorite mutual fund or annuity or life insurance wholesaler. You probably like them because they're really good to you. They take you to nice events. They buy you gifts, things along those lines. So we're going to reference in one of our web-based programs, creating your own marketing plan. So examples of things that we're doing is CPA should be getting your newsletters. They should be invited to your barbecue in your backyard over the summer. During tax season, they should be getting tax survival baskets. Every once in a while, we just deliver lunch to these CPA's offices or a dozen donuts from Dunkin' Donuts. These little gestures, just like a wholesaler, guys, this is what keeps you top of mind. It's what ultimately helps the CPA say when they do get that passive referral or when they do think about creating an active referral, XYZ advisor just dropped off lunch at my office or invited me to play golf or invited me to a client event or dropped off a big tax survival basket during tax season. If I've done that in my practice and there were two other financial advisors in the community that the CPA knows, but those two advisors didn't do those things and I did, who do you think has the best chance of getting those referrals? So I know I spend a long time on this CPA relationship model. I do it for a reason. If you can truly understand where we're trying to go and what that flow looks like, and that's what I want you to get, is all we're trying to do is push the ball forward, get from meeting to meeting, and slowly influence the relationship. We're going from interview to credibility building to helping them dip the foot in their pool to treating it like a business and having a weekly or bi-weekly interaction, in which case we're going to influence the role. We're going to influence the relationship and the role that we want the CPA to have. If you get that right now, you're exactly where I want you to be in the training. We're going to begin next session to talk a little bit about common CPA concerns and how to alleviate them. I really want you to understand the CPA's mindset. They don't like us. They don't trust us. Understand that. And they want us to be in a position where we are earning their respect throughout the process. If you follow the system step by step, you will be building credibility. And what this is all about, guys, is credibility. And it's helping the CPA see that we are helping them to ultimately fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to their clients. More on that later in the program. So I hope at this point in time you continue to be excited. You're understanding what the relationship model looks like and exactly where we're starting to take the ball. We're going to take a brief recess and come back and start to talk about common CPA concerns. Hang in there and more to come shortly.